You don't need to do anything. Just listen and let go.
You know those nights when everything just feels right, like the city's humming softly around you, but you're wrapped in this cozy little bubble. That's what tonight feels like. The neon signs of Seoul glow kinda soft through the window, not too bright, just enough to make the room feel warm. Jimin's curled up in the big armchair like a cat, phone lazily scrolling through some food delivery app. Every now and then, he mumbles something about tteokbokki or fried chicken, but mostly it's just comfortable silence. Taehyung's sprawled on the floor doodling in a notebook, occasionally showing Jungkook some weird little sketch that makes them both giggle. Somewhere in the background, there's the quiet clink of dishes as Jin and Yoongi tidy up from dinner. Not like anyone asked them to. They just kinda drifted into it naturally, the way people do when they've lived together forever. The smell of green tea and honey hangs in the air from the cups Namjoon made earlier. Outside, the city noises blend into this nice white noise, distant car horns, the occasional laugh from the street below. It's late, but not that late. That perfect time where you're not thinking about tomorrow yet, just enjoying right now. J-Hope's got some chill playlist going, something with lots of piano and soft beats that fits the mood perfectly. You can tell everyone's tired in that good way, you know. Not exhausted, just content. Like after a long day where everything went okay. Hoodies and socks everywhere. Someone's phone charging halfway across the room because nobody could be bothered to get up. That kind of night. Jungkook started nodding off against Taehyung's shoulder, but he keeps blinking awake every time Taehyung shakes with silent laughter at his own drawings. There's ink smudged on Taehyung's fingers, and honestly, at this point, it's probably gonna end up on Jungkook's sleeve too. Nobody cares. Over by the kitchen, Yoongi's drying the last dish, while Jin leans against the counter telling some story about their trainee days. The kind they've all heard 100 times, but it doesn't matter because it's comforting, like an old sweater. Jin's doing that thing where he gestures with the dish towel like it's a microphone. The music shifts to something even slower, and you can practically feel the room sink deeper into the couch cushions. Somebody yawns, somebody else mumbles same, and Jimin finally gives up on pretending to look at his phone, just letting it rest on his stomach as his eyes drift shut. Taehyung's sketches have gotten progressively messier as Jungkook keeps leaning heavier against him, until suddenly there's this quiet oof when the younger actually fully flops over sideways. Taehyung just blinks at his now ruined drawing for a second before shrugging and using Jungkook's back as a makeshift table to keep doodling. In the kitchen, Jin's voice drops to this half-whisper halfway through his story when he notices Yoongi's eyes getting that heavy-lidded look. Doesn't stop the story though, just keeps going, while absent-mindedly folding the dish towel into these tiny squares like he always does when he's winding down. The whole apartment smells like that nice mix of laundry detergent, and whatever Jin cooked earlier, plus that hint of rain starting to mist against the windows. It's one of those smells you don't really notice till later, when you're trying to remember why that night felt so perfect. Jimin's phone slips off his stomach with a soft thump onto the carpet, but he's already too far gone to notice. His hands are curled up near his chin like a kid's, and somebody really should drape a blanket over him before he wakes up all stiff-necked tomorrow. Namjoon wanders in from the balcony where he'd been scrolling through emails, sees the sleepy chaos of limbs and sketchbooks, and just smiles while shaking his head. He kicks off his shoes by the door extra quiet, the way you do when you don't want to ruin the vibe. Jin finally finishes his story to discover Yoongi's basically asleep, standing up against the fridge, dish towel still clutched in one hand. He debates waking him, then decides they've all earned this weird little pocket of peace where time doesn't really matter. Jungkook's fully koala'd around Taehyung now, face smushed against his shoulder, while T still kinda tries to doodle one-handed. It's mostly scribbles at this point, but Taehyung's grinning like it's the Mona Lisa or something. Hobai notices Namjoon hovering by the doorway and gives him that tiny head nod they've perfected over years, the one that says, "You good," without actually saying anything. Namjoon nods back, already toeing off his socks, because home means not pretending anymore. The playlist shuffles to some instrumental track, so soft it's barely there. Just this gentle hum under everything. Jimin makes this tiny sigh noise in his sleep that makes Jin pause mid-step, dish towel halfway to the laundry basket, just smiling to himself like he's storing the sound away for later. Taehyung's pen finally runs dry, leaving this sad little streak when he tries to draw Jungkook's sleeping face on his own shirt collar. He squints at it for a second, then gives up and lets his head thunk back against the couch, staring at the ceiling with that dorky grin of his like. The ceiling told him a secret. Yoongi does that thing where he startles awake for half a second when Jin carefully pries the dish towel from his fingers. But he's out again before his eyelids finish fluttering. Jin doesn't even bother hiding his laugh this time, just drapes the towel over his own shoulder and keeps moving quiet-like. Somewhere outside, a motorcycle speeds by way too loud, but nobody in the room even twitches. They're all too far gone in that good way, where the world outside could be ending, and it wouldn't matter because right here, right now, everything's exactly where it's supposed to be. Hobai's fingers tap against his thigh along to the music, but it's slower now, like even his hands are getting sleepy. He catches Namjoon's eye and mouths, "You coming?" with this little jerk of his head toward the couch. Namjoon shakes his head, but he's smiling, already shuffling toward the armchair where Jimin's basically turned into a human pretzel. Taehyung's given up on drawing entirely now, just letting his hand flop onto Jungkook's back like that's where it belongs. His fingers twitch every now and then like he's still imagining lines on paper, but his eyes are closed and his breathing's getting slower. Jungkook makes this tiny snuffling noise that makes Taehyung smile without opening his eyes. Jin finally gives up on pretending to be productive, just leans his elbows on the counter, and watches everyone with that soft look he gets when he's happy, but too tired to say it. The dish towel's still hanging off his shoulder like some weird fashion statement, and honestly, at this point, it's probably gonna stay there till morning. Namjoon manages to squeeze himself into the armchair next to Jimin without waking him, which is kinda impressive considering Jimin's basically folded himself into a pretzel shape. He pulls Jimin's legs onto his lap like it's the most normal thing in the world, and Jimin just makes this little MMPF noise and curls tighter. Hobai's playlist hits that perfect lullaby track where you can't tell if the piano's getting slower or if you're just imagining it. Either way, his fingers stop tapping completely, and his head lolls back against the couch cushions like it suddenly got too heavy to hold up. Taehyung's hand finally stops twitching on Jungkook's back, fingers going completely still mid-doodle like someone hit pause. The ink smudges on his fingertips are gonna be hell to wash off tomorrow, but right now, couldn't matter less. Jin lets out this huge yawn that makes his whole body wiggle, dish towel slipping off his shoulder without him even noticing. He rubs his eyes with the back of his hand like a little kid, eyelashes fluttering against his cheeks. Namjoon's got that sleepy smile where one corner of his mouth quirks up more than the other, like his face can't decide if it wants to smirk or not. His fingers absently trace circles on Jimin's ankle where it's resting on his thigh, the way you'd pet a sleepy cat. Somewhere in the distance, the playlist clicks over to another song, but it's so quiet now, it might as well be someone breathing. Hobai's foot twitches like he's still trying to tap along, but his toes just wiggle once under his socks before going still again. Jimin shifts in his sleep, his head sliding down Namjoon's shoulder until his cheek is squished against it. He makes this tiny complaining noise in his throat, but when Namjoon freezes mid-circle drawing, Jimin just sighs and settles deeper, like that was exactly where he meant to be all along. Yoongi's forehead is pressed against the fridge door, where he's still half standing, half leaning like a drunk scarecrow. The condensation from the fridge is probably making his bangs stick up weird, but nobody's awake enough to tease him about it yet. Taehyung's fingers curl slightly against Jungkook's back, not quite gripping, but not quite letting go either. That sleepy halfway hold where you're not sure if you're holding on or being held. Outside, the rain starts pattering properly against the windows, but inside it just makes everything feel even more like a cocoon. Jin's eyes keep drooping shut for longer stretches between blinks, his chin dipping toward his chest before he catches himself. The dish towels slid all the way down his arm now, dangling from his wrist like some weird bracelet he didn't mean to wear. Hobai's head tilts sideways until it's resting against the couch cushion at this angle that looks kinda uncomfortable, but must be fine because he's not moving. His mouth's slightly open like he forgot to close it, and his eyelashes cast these tiny shadows on his cheeks from the dim light. Namjoon's stopped drawing circles on Jimin's ankle completely now, his hand just resting there warm and heavy. His glasses are sliding down his nose, but he's too far gone to push them back up, so they're just kinda sitting there crooked, reflecting the soft glow from the streetlights outside. Jin finally gives in and lets his forehead thunk onto the counter with this quiet oof that nobody hears. The dish towel slips off his wrist completely now, landing in a little heap by his feet, but he's already halfway to dreamland, so it doesn't even register. Taehyung's breathing's gone all slow, and even against Jungkook's hair, his fingers finally relaxing completely where they're curled against Jungkook's back. Jungkook makes this tiny sleepy noise like he's answering some question T didn't even ask, and T's mouth twitches like he wants to laugh, but can't be bothered to actually do it. Hobai's foot twitches one last time like his body's trying to keep the rhythm going. But then his whole leg goes slack against the couch cushions. His phone's still open on his lap, screen long since gone dark, but his thumb's resting right where the play button is like he's ready to cue up the next song, even in his sleep. Yoongi's knees buckle just slightly against the fridge door, making the whole thing rattle for a second. Jin would have teased him about it if he wasn't already half asleep himself. Forehead still pressed to the kitchen counter, with his arms curled loosely around his head, like a kid napping at school. Namjoon's glasses finally slip all the way off his nose, landing softly on Jimin's thigh. Jimin doesn't even stir, just keeps breathing slow, and even with his face still smushed into Namjoon's shoulder. Namjoon blinks down at his glasses like he's trying to decide if they're worth retrieving, then just sighs and lets his head drop back against the chair. Taehyung's mouth finally stops twitching, going slack against Jungkook's hair as his breathing evens out completely. His last scribble on Jungkook's shirt is barely even a shape anymore, just this lazy spiral that kinda looks like a seashell if you squint at it sideways. Jin's arms slide off the counter slowly, like his body's giving up one limb at a time. His left hand ends up dangling near the dish towel pile, fingers twitching like he's still trying to fold something in his sleep. Hobai's phone slides off his lap with this tiny asterisk blink noise, but he doesn't even flinch. His head's tipped back at that angle where his neck's gotta hurt tomorrow. But right now, his face looks so relaxed it's almost goofy. Yoongi makes this tiny snort against the fridge door that makes his bangs flutter, then goes completely still again, like his body just rebooted mid-snore. The fridge hums softly under his weight, sounding weirdly comforting, like some kinda mechanical lullaby. Jin's head slips sideways on the counter, until his cheeks smooshed flat against it. Mouth squished open in this dumb-looking way he'd never let anyone photograph. His right arm's hanging off the edge now, fingers brushing against the forgotten dish towel like he's trying to pet it in his sleep. Namjoon's breathing gets all deep and slow, making Jimin's hair puff up slightly every time he exhales. Jimin wrinkles his nose in his sleep like he's annoyed about it, but then just nuzzles closer like he can't help himself. Taehyung's arm slides off Jungkook's back completely now, landing with a soft flop on the couch cushion. His hand stays kinda half-curled though, like he's still holding an invisible pen even in his dreams. The fridge makes this weird gurgling noise that makes Yoongi's nose scrunch up in his sleep. But he doesn't wake up, just leans heavier against it, like the fridge owes him money or something. Jin's left foot starts doing this tiny twitchy thing against the kitchen floor, like he's running in his dream. But only his toes got the memo. The dish towel's all wrinkled up under his fingers now, but he's squeezing it gently like it's a stress ball. Hobai's playlist finally hits the end, leaving this perfect quiet where all you can hear is 7 people breathing all out of sync, but somehow still together. Outside, the rain keeps tapping on the windows like it's trying to join in, but doesn't know the rhythm. Jungkook's nose wrinkles up like he's smelling something funny in his sleep, making Taehyung's arm twitch where it's still kinda draped over him. T doesn't wake up though, just kinda grumbles nonsense under his breath and presses his face deeper into the couch cushions. Yoongi's legs finally give out completely against the fridge, sliding down slow like he's melting, until he's sitting on the floor with his head tipped back against the appliance. His mouth's hanging open just enough that Jin would roast him if he wasn't currently drooling on the kitchen counter himself. Namjoon's hand slips off Jimin's ankle completely now, just kinda flopping onto the armrest like a dead fish. Jimin makes this tiny noise like he's protesting the loss, then just grabs Namjoon's sleeve in his sleep instead, like a kid clutching a teddy bear. Jin's fingers finally stop messing with the dish towel, his whole hand going limp against the kitchen tiles. His pinkies resting in some spilled tea from earlier, but he's way too far gone to care about sticky fingers right now. Hobai's got this one lock of hair sticking straight up where it got smooshed against the couch cushion, and honestly, it's gonna be hilarious when someone takes a picture of it tomorrow morning. Right now, though, it's just kinda bobbing slightly with each sleepy breath he takes. Taehyung's foot kicks out randomly like he's dreaming about soccer or something, accidentally knocking Jungkook's shin. Jungkook just grunts and curls tighter into T's side like he's trying to become one with the couch cushions. Jin's breathing slows down to this deep, rhythmic pattern that makes the dish towel flutter slightly every time he exhales. There's a tiny puddle of drool forming under his cheek now, but the kitchen tiles don't mind. They're keeping his face cool while he naps. Yoongi's fingers twitch against the fridge door like he's still holding that dish towel, making soft, plastic-y crinkling sounds against the stainless steel. His eyebrows do this little furrow dance every few seconds, like even in sleep, he's still judging someone's life choices. Hobai's lips purse slightly like he's about to say something important. But all that comes out is this tiny whistly snore that makes his own nose wrinkle in protest. The streetlights outside paint shifting patterns across the ceiling as the rain keeps falling. But inside stays perfectly still. Jungkook's fingers twitch against Taehyung's sleeve like he's reaching for something in his dream. But then his whole arm goes slack again, draped over Taehyung's stomach like a seatbelt. T doesn't even stir, just breathes deeper like Jungkook's weight is the world's coziest blanket. Yoongi's head lolls sideways until it's resting against the fridge door at this angle that'll definitely leave a weird red mark tomorrow. His bangs are stuck to his forehead in this ridiculous cowlick that Jin would have lovingly mocked if he wasn't currently using the counter as a pillow. Namjoon's sleeve stays firmly clutched in Jimin's fist, the fabric all wrinkled where Jimin's fingers keep flexing slightly in his sleep. Somewhere outside, a car alarm goes off 3 streets away, but in here, there's just 7 heartbeats slowing down together. Yoongi's foot slides out from under him until he's basically sitting in a weird half-split against the fridge door. His sock has this hole near the toe that Jin keeps meaning to mend. And now his pinky's poking through like it's trying to say hello to the kitchen tiles. Jin's breath hitches for half a second like he's about to snore, then evens out into this soft, wheezy sound instead. The dish towel under his fingers is all bunched up now, looking like some weird modern art sculpture of exhaustion. Taehyung's lips part just enough to let out this tiny puff of air against Jungkook's hair, making the younger's bangs flutter slightly. Outside, the rain keeps whispering against the windows, like it's telling secrets only the night can hear. Jimin's fingers loosen around Namjoon's sleeve bit by bit, his knuckles going slack one at a time, until his hand just rests open on the armrest. The streetlight filtering through the curtains paints golden stripes across his cheekbones, making his eyelashes cast shadows like tiny fans. Hobai's playlist has long since ended, leaving behind that perfect hush where the only sounds are the fridge's hum and 7 sets of breathing slowly syncing up. Someone, probably Yoongi, lets out this soft sigh that sounds like all the tension leaving the world at once. Jin's drool puddle has reached critical mass now, spreading slowly across the counter in a shape vaguely resembling Australia. His fingers twitch one last time against the dish towel like he's waving goodbye to consciousness, then go completely still in the warm pool of spilled tea. The fridge chooses this moment to make its loudest gurgle yet, startling Yoongi's leg into kicking out sideways like a sleeping frog. His foot connects with the cabinet door with a soft asterisk thunk, but he just mumbles something that sounds suspiciously like stupid, expensive organic milk before his face relaxes back into sleep. Jungkook's foot has somehow wormed its way under Taehyung's thigh in their sleep, toes curling intermittently like he's dreaming about climbing something. Taehyung responds by pressing his chin harder against Jungkook's head in his sleep, creating this weird sleep feedback loop where they keep unconsciously adjusting to each other's movements. Hobai's rogue lock of hair has finally surrendered to gravity, flopping sideways across his forehead in a way that makes him look about 12 years old. His lips keep making these tiny smacking sounds like he's tasting phantom snacks in his dreams. And honestly, it's probably something involving strawberries. Jungkook's knee jerks suddenly like he's dreaming about dancing, accidentally kneecapping Taehyung in the thigh. T just groans sleepily and retaliates by blowing a raspberry into Jungkook's hair without waking up, leaving them both tangled in this drowsy wrestling match that never escalates past lazy limb flopping. Yoongi's socked foot slides completely free from the hole in his sock now, his pinky toe wiggling independently like it's waving hello to Jin's forgotten dish towel. The fridge hums approvingly at this development, its compressor kicking on with a vibration that makes Yoongi's head bob gently against the door like it's nodding along. Somewhere in the distance, a neighborhood cat starts yowling about whatever drama cats have at 3 a.m. But inside the apartment, all 7 breathing patterns have synced into this slow tidal rhythm. Inhales overlapping exhales like perfectly imperfect puzzle pieces fitting together. The rain finally eases into a gentle drizzle, tapping Morse code messages on the windows that nobody needs to translate. Taehyung's fingers twitch against Jungkook's side like he's still drawing in his sleep, leaving invisible ink traces on the fabric of Jungkook's hoodie. Jungkook responds by scrunching his nose and burrowing deeper into T's shoulder, his socked foot kicking out weakly like he's trying to shake off a dream mosquito. Jin's left hand has slid completely off the counter now, dangling limply near Yoongi's sprawled legs. His fingers occasionally brush against Yoongi's torn sock in sleepy half-consciousness, neither awake enough to register the contact, nor asleep enough to stop making it. Namjoon's head has tipped sideways until his cheek rests against Jimin's hair, his crooked glasses now reflecting the bluish glow of a passing police siren 3 floors below. Jimin's exhales puff warmly against Namjoon's collarbone, each breath stirring the fabric of his shirt in tiny ripples that match the fatting raindrops outside. Hobai's fingers finally relax completely against his thigh, his palm turning upward like he's cupping moonlight in his sleep. The crease between his eyebrows smooths out completely, leaving his face looking younger than it has in years. Just soft angles and peaceful shadows. Yoongi's socked foot twitches against Jin's fingertips one last time before going still, his pinky toe curling inward like it's finally decided to stop exploring the kitchen tiles. The fridge's hum drops to its lowest setting, almost as if it's trying not to disturb the sprawled human now using it as a pillow. Jungkook makes this tiny humming noise against Taehyung's shoulder, the vibration traveling through T's collarbone, until T unconsciously pats Jungkook's back twice in his sleep. Not hard enough to wake him, just enough to say, "I'm here," without words. The ink smudges on Taehyung's fingers glow faintly in the dim light, looking like constellations mapped across Jungkook's wrinkled hoodie. Jin's right foot starts tapping against the kitchen cabinet in some dream rhythm. Each soft asterisk tap tap, perfectly spaced, like he's conducting an orchestra. Only he can hear. The dish towel under his fingers gets one last absent-minded squeeze before his whole body finally sinks into that weightless place between dreams and memory. Hobai's bottom lip puffs out slightly with each exhale now, making this tiny sound that would be hilarious if anyone was awake to hear it. His hair has fallen completely over one eye, but he doesn't bother brushing it away. Just keeps breathing slow and easy, like his whole body forgot how to be tense. Outside, the last raindrop slides down the window pane in slow motion, catching the neon glow from the convenience store sign across the street before disappearing into the sill. Inside, 7 heartbeats keep time to some invisible melody. 7 chests rising and falling like waves, lapping at the same quiet shore. Jimin's fingers twitch against Namjoon's sleeve one last time before curling loosely around nothing, his palm warm where it rests against the armrest. Somewhere in his dreams, he's probably laughing that airy, breathless giggle that makes his shoulders shake while he presses a hand to his mouth. Jungkook's socked foot finally stills against Taehyung's thigh, his toes uncurling like a cat, stretching in sunlight. The ink from Taehyung's earlier doodles has seeped into the fabric of his hoodie by now, leaving behind faint blue constellations that'll make him smile groggily when he finds them tomorrow. The fridge light flickers once, just a power surge, casting Yoongi's sleeping face in sudden brightness, before plunging him back into soft shadows. His mouth moves silently around some dream conversation, eyebrows lifting briefly as if surprised by his own subconscious, before relaxing again. Jin's drool has formed a tiny bridge between his lower lip and the countertop, stretching and thinning with each slow breath, until it finally snaps unnoticed. His left foot stops its tapping against the cabinet, toes curling inward like a cat, tucking its paws under its chest. Hobai's phone screen lights up dimly with a forgotten notification, casting a pale blue rectangle across the couch cushions before going dark again. His lips part slightly as his breathing deepens, one arm slipping off the edge of the couch until his fingertips brush the carpet fibers. Taehyung's half-finished doodle on Jungkook's sleeve catches a raindrop's reflection from the window, making the spirals shimmer like wet ink for just a second before the clouds shift again. Jungkook responds by sighing through his nose, his eyelashes fluttering against Taehyung's shoulder like he's dreaming about blinking. Namjoon's crooked glasses slide further down Jimin's thigh, catching the glow of a passing delivery scooter's headlights outside. The lenses warp the light into wobbly circles that dance across Jimin's socked feet before disappearing when the scooter turns the corner. Yoongi's head lolls sideways against the fridge door until his cheek presses fully against the cool metal, his lips parting with a tiny asterisk pop as they unstick. The condensation from the fridge beads up in his bangs, making them curl in odd directions that look ridiculous if anyone was awake to see. Jin's fingers finally stop twitching against the spilled tea puddle, his pinky settling into the sticky spot with this tiny squish noise nobody hears. The dish towel underneath his hand has absorbed just enough liquid to stick to his palm in wrinkled peaks, like a miniature mountain range made of cotton. Taehyung's breathing hitches for half a second when Jungkook's knee jerks again in his sleep, but he just exhales slowly through his nose and presses his smile into Jungkook's hair. The ink smudges on his fingertips have transferred to Jungkook's sleeve in faint fingerprints that look like sleepy constellations. Namjoon's crooked glasses catch the glow of dawn's first light sneaking through the curtains, painting wobbly rectangles across Jimin's socked feet. Jimin responds by curling his toes instinctively, his heel rubbing against Namjoon's thigh in this sleepy, half-conscious nudge that says, "I'm here," without words. The fridge compressor clicks off with this satisfied sigh-like hiss, leaving Yoongi's head resting against suddenly silent metal. His socked foot slides the rest of the way out of its hole, his pinky toe finally going still against Jin's fingertips, like they've reached some unspoken sleeping truce. Jungkook's eyelashes flutter against Taehyung's shoulder one last time before stilling completely, his breathing syncing perfectly with T's rising chest. The ink smudges between them have blurred into one amorphous shape now, looking vaguely like a cloud, or maybe a badly drawn sheep if you squint just right. Hobai's stray lock of hair finally surrenders completely, flopping across his closed eyelid without him bothering to brush it away. His lips twitch like he's about to say something profound in his sleep, but all that comes out is this tiny whistling exhale that makes his own nose wrinkle in response. Outside, the convenience store's neon sign flickers off as dawn pinks the sky, but the soft glow from Namjoon's abandoned phone screen keeps Jimin's socked feet bathed in bluish light. His toes curl slightly when a particularly warm sunbeam finds its way through the curtains, but he doesn't wake, just sighs and nuzzles deeper into Namjoon's shoulder like a cat finding the perfect patch of sunlight. Jin's left hand has somehow ended up draped over Yoongi's socked foot during the night, their fingers tangled in the torn fabric like they're holding hands by proxy. Yoongi's nose scrunches when Jin's thumb moves slightly in sleep, but he just exhales through his mouth in this tiny whistling sound that makes Jin's own lips quirk unconsciously. Taehyung's ink-stained fingers have gone completely slack against Jungkook's back now, leaving behind faint blue smudges that'll puzzle them both tomorrow. Jungkook responds by sighing deeply, this warm, contented sound that ruffles Taehyung's collar before settling back into sleep with his forehead pressed firmly against Taehyung's shoulder like he's trying to memorize the shape of it. Hobai's playlist has long since ended, but the quiet hum of the refrigerator and 7 synchronized breaths create their own kind of lullaby. Someone, maybe Jimin, makes this tiny sleepy noise that sounds suspiciously like the chorus of Spring Day, making Namjoon's lips twitch in unconscious recognition, even as he remains deeply asleep. The morning light creeps further across the floor, warming Taehyung's socked feet, where they poke out from under Jungkook's sprawled legs. Jungkook responds by curling his toes instinctively, his heel nudging against Taehyung's thigh in a motion that's half protest, half comfort-seeking, before they both settle again, like 2 puzzle pieces clicking into place. Yoongi's cheek sticks slightly to the fridge door when he shifts in his sleep, making this soft, peeling sound that would have made Jin laugh if he wasn't currently using his folded arms as a pillow. Instead, Jin just breathes deeper, his shoulders rising and falling in time with the distant rhythm of a passing subway train 3 blocks away. Jimin's fingers finally relax completely around Namjoon's sleeve, his palm going slack as his wrist drapes over the armrest like a wilting flower. The morning sun catches the faint dust motes swirling above them, turning each particle into a tiny golden star in this drowsy galaxy they've created together. Jungkook's socked foot twitches once more against Taehyung's thigh, his toes curling briefly before going still again, the last protest of a body finally surrendering to deep sleep. Taehyung's ink-stained fingertips press unconsciously against Jungkook's shoulder blade in response, leaving behind one final smudged heart shape that'll make them both grin when daylight properly arrives. Yoongi's breathing has settled into this soft, snuffling rhythm against the fridge door, his bangs now completely plastered to his forehead in ridiculous cowlicks from the condensation. Every now and then, his nose wrinkles like he's smelling something funny in his dreams, but his shoulders stay slumped in that perfect, heavy relaxation of someone who knows they're exactly where they belong. Hobai's phone buzzes softly against the couch cushions with some forgotten alarm, but the vibration is immediately swallowed by the plush fabric, just a tiny hiccup in the quiet that makes his eyelashes flutter briefly before his breathing evens out again. Outside, the city keeps waking up around them, but inside their tangled pile of limbs and quiet sighs, morning can wait a little longer. Jin's cheek has migrated from the counter to his folded arms now, leaving behind a faint red imprint on his skin that'll take at least 3 cups of coffee to laugh about later. His fingers twitch occasionally against Yoongi's socked foot, like he's still trying to fold phantom dish towels, even in his dreams. Each movement slower than the last, until his hands go completely still. Taehyung's lips part slightly against Jungkook's hair, letting out this tiny puff of air that makes Jungkook's bangs flutter like dandelion seeds catching the breeze. Neither of them stir, just sink deeper into each other's warmth, as sunlight paints gold stripes across Taehyung's ink-smudged fingers where they rest against Jungkook's back. Namjoon's crooked glasses have slid all the way down Jimin's thigh by now, catching the morning light in their scratched lenses and scattering tiny rainbows across Jimin's socked feet. Jimin's toes curl instinctively when a particularly warm sunbeam lands on them, but he just sighs contentedly and presses closer to Namjoon's side, his fingers finally relaxing completely against the armrest like fallen leaves settling on still water. The ink smudges between Taehyung and Jungkook have blurred beyond recognition by now, mixing with fabric wrinkles and sleep-warm creases to create abstract patterns that tell their own quiet story. Jungkook's breathing hitches for half a second when a dream passes through his mind, making Taehyung unconsciously tighten his arm around him just enough to murmur something sleepily into his hair without ever waking up. Yoongi's socked foot has somehow ended up tangled with Jin's fingers beneath the kitchen table, their limbs creating this lazy knot that neither would admit to in daylight. Every now and then, Jin's thumb moves slightly against Yoongi's ankle in his sleep, making Yoongi's nose wrinkle like he's smelling something funny, before his face smooths out again into that rare peaceful expression he only wears when he's truly relaxed. Hobai's playlist may have ended hours ago, but the quiet symphony of 7 sleeping breaths fills the apartment just as beautifully out-of-sync heartbeats and sleepy sighs, blending with the distant hum of the city waking up outside their windows. Someone, maybe Jungkook, makes this tiny happy noise in their sleep that sounds suspiciously like the beginning of a laugh. And for just that moment, everything feels perfectly, simply right. Jin's left foot twitches against the cabinet door like he's dreaming about kicking a soccer ball, his toes curling briefly before relaxing again as his head sinks deeper into the crook of his elbow. The dish towel forgotten beneath his fingers has long since soaked up the spilled tea, the damp fabric now molded to the shape of his palm like a second skin. He'll only notice when proper daylight hits. Jimin's eyelashes flutter against Namjoon's shoulder as some dream crosses his mind, his lips curving into that private smile he only gets when he's truly at peace. Without waking, Namjoon's hand moves instinctively to cover Jimin's wrist where it rests on the armrest, their fingers accidentally overlapping in a way that'll make them both pretend not to notice when they finally wake. Taehyung's ink-stained fingers have gone completely slack against Jungkook's back now, leaving behind faint blue smudges that'll puzzle them both tomorrow. Just another sleepy mystery in their collection of shared mornings. Outside, the newspaper delivery scooter putters by with its familiar rattle. But inside their cocoon of warmth and tangled limbs, the world feels perfectly paused in this quiet, golden moment between night and day. Namjoon's crooked glasses catch the sunlight filtering through the curtains, scattering prismatic shapes across Jimin's socked feet that shift whenever someone breathes too deeply. Jimin's toes curl slightly in response, pressing briefly against Namjoon's thigh like a sleepy acknowledgement before relaxing again. One of those tiny unconscious gestures that speak volumes when no one's keeping score. Jin's drool has formed a tiny puddle near his elbow now, glinting absurdly in the morning light like some ridiculous modern art installation about exhaustion and contentment. Yoongi's socked foot twitches against Jin's fingers beneath the table, his pinky toe wiggling in protest before settling again. A silent debate between sleep and waking that his body quietly loses. Hobai's playlist may have ended hours ago, but the apartment thrums with its own quiet rhythm. 7 heartbeats, 7 sets of breathing, 7 imperfectly perfect bodies sprawled across furniture, and floors like living proof that rest doesn't need to look graceful to feel like home. Jungkook's eyelashes flutter against Taehyung's collarbone as the morning sun crests higher, painting gold stripes across his cheekbones that make him look like some Renaissance painting of contentment. Taehyung responds by unconsciously rubbing his chin against Jungkook's hair, leaving behind tiny static sparks that neither will remember when they finally wake. The fridge hums back to life with a quiet shudder, making Yoongi's bangs flutter where they're still stuck to his forehead from condensation. Jin's fingers twitch against Yoongi's ankle in some dream about dishwashing, his thumb moving in absent circles against the worn sock fabric like he's polishing silverware in his sleep. Outside, a street vendor begins setting up his stall with clattering metal pans, but the sound is muffled and distant, just another layer in the soft soundtrack of Seoul, waking up around their little pocket of peace. Inside, Jimin's socked foot nudges against Namjoon's knee like a cat seeking warmth, his toes curling briefly when sunlight hits them directly before relaxing into the perfect stillness of deep sleep. Yoongi's sock has slipped halfway off his foot where it's tangled with Jin's fingers, revealing a glimpse of his pinky toe twitching slightly against the kitchen tiles like it's keeping time to some dream song. Jin responds by exhaling sharply through his nose, his shoulders rising and falling with the rhythm of someone who's completely let go of wakefulness, his cheek squished so thoroughly against his folded arms that his lips puff out slightly with each breath. Hobai's stray lock of hair has migrated completely over his closed eyelid by now, fluttering slightly when he exhales through parted lips, tiny puffs of air that stir the strands like dandelion seeds caught in a breeze. His fingers, which had been loosely curled around his phone all night, finally go slack against the couch cushions, letting the device slide completely onto the floor with a soft asterisk thump that no one hears. Taehyung's ink-stained fingertips twitch once more against Jungkook's hoodie, leaving behind one final smudged spiral that blends seamlessly with fabric wrinkles and sleep-warm creases. Jungkook answers with this tiny, contented sigh that ruffles Taehyung's collar, a sound so quiet it barely exists at all, before they both settle back into synchronized breathing. Two heartbeats thumping lazily against each other like distant drums, keeping time to the same slow song. Namjoon's crooked glasses catch another sunbeam, scattering prism shapes across Jimin's socked feet that shift whenever either of them breathes too deeply. Jimin's toes curl instinctively when the light hits a ticklish spot, pressing briefly against Namjoon's thigh like a cat needing blankets before relaxing again. One of those unconscious gestures that feels like a secret shared between their sleeping selves. Jin's cheek sticks slightly to his folded arms when he shifts in his sleep, making this soft, peeling noise that would have made Yoongi snort if he wasn't currently drooling against the fridge door. Instead, Yoongi just exhales sharply through his nose, this little whistling sound that makes his own bangs flutter, before settling back into stillness, his socked foot twitching once against Jin's fingers like he's dreaming about kicking a soccer ball. Hobai's eyelashes flutter when sunlight finally hits his face properly, casting delicate shadows across his cheeks that look like ink, strokes from Taehyung's abandoned sketchbook. His lips part slightly, not quite a smile, just that soft expression he gets when he's drifting between dreams. As the distant clatter of breakfast dishes from the apartment below blends perfectly with 7 sets of breathing, 7 heartbeats, 7 bodies tangled together in this quiet pocket of peace where morning hasn't quite arrived yet. Jin's fingers twitch against Yoongi's ankle again, curling reflexively around the worn sock fabric like he's unconsciously checking if the kitchen towel he folded in his dream was real. Yoongi's corresponding snuffle vibrates gently against the fridge door, his breath fogging up the metal in tiny circles that disappear almost instantly, little fleeting halos that nobody notices, but the sunlight slowly creeping across the floor tiles. Namjoon's thumb moves absently against Jimin's wrist, where their hands overlap on the armrest, tracing invisible constellations that only exist in the space between sleep and waking. Jimin responds by exhaling sharply through his nose, this tiny puff of air that makes Namjoon's sleeve flutter before settling back into stillness with his face smushed so thoroughly against Namjoon's shoulder that his cheek looks vaguely pancake-shaped in the best possible way. The ink smudges on Taehyung's fingers have transferred completely to Jungkook's hoodie now, blending with fabric wrinkles and sleep-warm creases to create abstract patterns that tell their own quiet story of tangled limbs and shared warmth. Jungkook's answering sigh ruffles Taehyung's collar again, this deep, contented sound that makes his shoulders rise and fall like ocean waves, as sunlight paints gold stripes across their messy hair, turning each strand into its own sleepy work of art. Hobai's head finally lolls completely sideways against the couch cushion, his lips parting slightly as a stray sunbeam catches the tiny scar above his eyebrow, the one he got during trainee days that nobody remembers how he got anymore. His fingers twitch once against his phone case before going still, leaving behind faint fingerprints on the screen that'll linger until someone wipes them away with a dish towel later. Jin's folded arms have gone completely slack against the counter now, his elbows sliding slightly apart to reveal the flushed imprint of his cheek, pressed too long against his sleeve. The forgotten dish towel beneath his fingers has absorbed spilled tea and condensation into one damp mess, but his thumb moves absently against the fabric anyway, tiny circular motions, like he's still polishing glasses in his dreams. Outside, the newspaper delivery scooter putters by with its familiar morning rattle, but inside their cocoon of tangled limbs and shared breaths, the sound barely registers. Just another layer in the soundtrack of Seoul, waking up around their little pocket of peace, where 7 heartbeats still thump lazily against each other like distant drums, keeping time to the same slow song. Jimin's socked foot twitches instinctively when sunlight hits a ticklish spot, his toes curling briefly against Namjoon's knee before relaxing again. One of those sleepy reflexes that makes Namjoon's lips quirk unconsciously in response, even as he remains deeply asleep, his crooked glasses still casting tiny rainbows across Jimin's thigh where they'd fallen hours ago. Yoongi's bangs flutter slightly when the fridge cycles back on, the condensation making them stick up at odd angles that would have drawn teasing if anyone were awake to see. Instead, Jin just exhales sharply through his nose in some parallel dream, his fingers tightening reflexively around Yoongi's socked ankle, like he's trying to fold it into a dish towel shape before going slack again. Jungkook's eyelashes cast delicate shadows against Taehyung's collarbone as the sun climbs higher, shifting slightly whenever Taehyung breathes 2 deeply tiny movements that neither notices, but somehow sync perfectly anyway, like 2 puzzle pieces that didn't know they fit until someone stopped trying to force them. Hobai's playlist has long since faded to silence, but the apartment thrums with its own quiet music, the hum of the fridge, the occasional rustle of fabric as someone shifts unconsciously, and 7 sets of breathing weaving together into something softer than any melody. Someone, probably Jimin, lets out this tiny sleep giggle that sounds suspiciously like the chorus of Dynamite, making Namjoon's lips twitch in shared amusement, even as he remains completely still beneath Jimin's weight. Yoongi's sock has slipped off completely now, revealing his toes, twitching slightly against the kitchen tile, like he's tapping out a rhythm only he can hear. Jin's fingers curl loosely around Yoongi's bare ankle in response, his thumb moving absently against the protruding bone there, not quite a massage, just that unconscious need to touch, even when asleep, like they're all connected by invisible strings that tighten whenever someone drifts too far. The ink smudges on Taehyung's fingertips have transferred completely to Jungkook's hoodie collar now, blending into the fabric like watercolor stains left behind after rain. Jungkook responds by nuzzling deeper against Taehyung's shoulder with this tiny sigh, half protest, half contentment, as sunlight paints their tangled limbs gold, turning ordinary morning shadows into something fleeting and precious, and theirs. Jin's fingers twitch one final time against Yoongi's bare ankle, tracing absent circles against the protruding bone like he's counting seconds until dawn. Yoongi's answering snuffle vibrates gently against the fridge door, his breath fogging up the metal in patterns that almost look like constellations if you squint sideways at them through sleepy eyes. Hobai's playlist may have ended hours ago, but the apartment thrums with its own quiet rhythm, 7 heartbeats pulsing just slightly out of sync, like instruments tuning before a concert no one remembers agreeing to play. Someone's socked foot, maybe Jimin's, twitches against Namjoon's knee again, toes curling briefly when sunlight hits a ticklish spot before relaxing into stillness once more. Outside, the newspaper vendor begins stacking fresh editions with crisp, rustling sounds. But inside their tangled nest of warmth, the noise barely registers. Just another layer in the soundtrack of Seoul waking up, while 7 bodies remain perfectly, peacefully paused between dreams and daylight, right where they belong. Taehyung's fingers twitch one last time against Jungkook's hoodie collar, leaving behind faint blue smudges that'll make them both grin groggily later. Little sleep-soft souvenirs of a night too comfortable to remember properly. Jungkook answers by exhaling sharply through his nose, the puff of air ruffling Taehyung's collar like a secret whispered directly into fabric folds meant for catching quiet confessions. Namjoon's thumb moves absently against Jimin's wrist where their hands overlap, tracing invisible constellations that only exist in the space between sleep and waking. Jimin responds by pressing his socked toes briefly against Namjoon's thigh, one of those tiny, unconscious gestures that speak volumes when no one's keeping score, before settling back into stillness with his face smushed thoroughly against Namjoon's shoulder. Hobai's eyelashes flutter when sunlight finally crests the windowsill properly, casting delicate shadows across his cheeks that shift whenever someone breathes too deeply nearby. His lips part slightly, not quite a smile, just that soft expression reserved for moments too peaceful to name, as 7 heartbeats thump lazily against each other like distant drums, keeping time to the same slow, golden song.